I want to launch a additional product on Amazon. What are the things that I need to keep an eye on before?
So, that's one of the biggest mistakes and pitfalls I see.
What are gated categories on Amazon and what are the process to ungate them?
And it really depends on which category you're getting into as to what you actually have to do.
What's your take on optimizing for roofers?
Ecommerce Squeezed podcast.
Welcome to Ecommerce Squeezed. I'm your host, Sebastian, founder of Retail-Outsource, and today we have a special guest with us today. He have guided numerous brands to success on Amazon. Joining us today is Noah Wickham, Sales Director at My Amazon Guy. With over a decade in experience on e-commerce and a portfolio exceeding 150 million in annual recurring revenue. Noah have a lot of experience, and we want to discuss how to list on Amazon and some of the troubleshooting that we can do on Amazon as well. So welcome to the show, Noah.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. Yeah, it's always fun being on these and being able to kind of spread more knowledge and teach people.
Yeah, you do a lot of free stuff to the community. That's really nice. So my first question: you were doing some eBay selling, right, back in the days, I assume. And what was the trigger that you jumped to Amazon?
So yeah, I started out as I feel like a lot of people did back in the day when e-commerce was kind of still in its somewhat infancy, right? I mean, it's been around obviously 20 plus years at this point, but even still, so I started just reselling some stuff on eBay, and it kind of grew to this point where I started looking at like what other people were doing, and very quickly was like, oh, why am I just reselling other people's stuff? Why am I had a Shopify store. I was doing some drop shipping because that was a big thing back in the day, right? And I was like, why am I selling other people's stuff when I could just be the guy who has the item, right? And sell the item. And so I thought that was a lot cooler of an idea. And, I tried it on Shopify and I had some minor success, but then, Amazon had never really even been in my purview. But then, I had ended up deciding, hey, let's try and get on Amazon. I had a friend who had just recently launched his own brand as well. And I was like, oh, let's do this. And so I brought my brand from Shopify over to Amazon. Back in the day, you had to do all sorts of stuff to actually get set up on the platform if you were on Shopify first. And they didn't have all the cool stuff with all the different apps and MCF and all of that. So it was a bit more of a difficult process. And I actually started with, shipping everything out from, my just garage in my house, and then ended up moving into kind of the 3PL range. And back in the day when you could actually do FBM and still do well on the platform. So yeah, realistically, it was a moment where I just kind of clicked of I wanted to be the brand owner, not, some random wholesaler.
Yeah, that's true. Means I can relate to you exactly. Means I started selling on eBay back in the days. But selling from the house, and it got so full with the stock. Means I was renting at the time. The landlord kicked me out. So yeah, a lot of stories. Regarding Amazon. So let's assume that I have some brands, registered trademark and enrolled on brand registry, but I want to launch a additional product on Amazon. So in that case, what are the things that I need to keep an eye on before launching that product or listing that product on Amazon?
Yeah. So if you have one already, so if you already have products on Amazon, a bit of a different process, but if you're launching from scratch, the biggest hurdle I see most sellers run into in this day and age is not really taking the time to trademark their brand, do brand registry, and then think, oh, I don't want to have to do all that before I launch. Realistically, you got to do that in this day and age because generic products are so likely to be hijacked, and they're so likely to just not perform as well and have a hard time with brand registry down the line. So, that's one of the biggest mistakes and pitfalls I see new brand sellers fall into is just make sure you're trademarked, make sure you have brand registry. But, more so than that, if you already have your brand, you're already selling on the platform. I think the really biggest thing when it comes to kind of diversifying your catalog is people who just kind of like start throwing random products together, right? You don't put any thought or wherewithal into, are you going to sell a deck of cards together with a, computer cleaning kit, right? Like those don't go together in the slightest. So you always want to try and look at different, products that are actually going to help each other, right? Try and bounce off each other, get some variations of the product. Or for instance, if you're going to do a, computer cleaning kit, can you do something along the lines of a duster, right? An electric duster that goes with it as well. Or can you do something like a keyboard stand, right? Even even things that minorly go together still work. But yeah, that's the biggest thing. Because if you're trying to build an actual brand on the platform, you can't just have a bunch of willy-nilly products, right? There's no point in it.
Yeah, that's it means it need to complement each other. That's a very nice point that you have. So you can build a kind of a good structure that you'll get traffic from each other. And I want to ask you about the gated categories. What are gated categories on Amazon, and what are the process to ungate them?
So gated on Amazon is actually interesting because it is slowly dying out, funny enough. But also, on top of that, it used to be a much, much bigger issue than it is nowadays, but it's becoming a worse issue for like third-party resellers. So if a product is gated on Amazon, that means that essentially you have to go through the process of having an invoice from the manufacturer. You have to have it direct from like the owner of the brand and be able to send that to Amazon, get the product ungated. But then there's categories that are gated, such as child products, right? Toys are gated as well. Some supplement types are gated. Healthcare products are gated. So these categories specifically, it really depends on which one you're getting into. But a lot of times, for instance, like children's toys or children items in general, you have to get a child product safety certificate, right? And that's a lot easier said than done. I was just talking with a seller the other day, and they're having a major issue right now where they got all of their items tested, and guess what? Every single one of them failed the testing. And so they can't send it into Amazon now. And it's like, they went through the entire process of, going to manufacturing, getting the right product, getting it sent over, manufactured, and signing up for Amazon, sending in the shipment, and then boom, they can't sell the product now. And so, yeah, gated categories, there's a lot of nuance around them, and it really depends on which category you're getting into as to what you actually have to do. Usually it comes down to make sure you have the right compliance certificates, especially if it's like a child product, making sure that if you're like a reseller, which resellers are about to have a much, much bigger issue on their hands when it comes to gated products, because they're actually just getting to the point where they're fully just gating specific listings down for like a lot of toys and everything. That's very common in Q4 for resellers. And so even if you have your invoices and it's direct from manufacturer or a distributor, you still can't get in anymore, unfortunately. So realistically, the biggest thing when you're getting into one of these categories, just ensure that you look through exactly what the compliance documentation is. I would always suggest a test order beforehand, that you get your actual certification and all of your compliance documentation tested with those products before you actually put a full shipment in.
Do you have a My Compliance guy, something in that brand name?
I mean, not really. That would just be our regular troubleshooting team, I suppose.
It will be nice, right?
Yeah, it would be an avenue for us to go down, is start offering compliance testing of some kind.
Yeah.
But I'm sure they would somehow track us back to my Amazon guy.
Yeah. Means you have like My Shopify guy. You have, I think a lot of domain registered in that series, right? So that's nice.
Yeah, we have my Amazon guy, Walmart guy, Shopify guy, Etsy guy, eBay guy. We got them all. We're your guy.
Yeah. That's great. And regarding keyword research, we have like tools like Helium 10 directly for Amazon. So in terms of keyword research, do you just pick the research from Helium 10, for example, or do you look outside of Amazon as well to get some extra keywords?
Yeah, primarily Helium 10, right? Especially if you're just launching, but you can also look at things like your search query performance. Once your product's actually launched, that's a really, really useful tool on Amazon that I'm still seeing people all the time not even know exists. And it's like, dude, this is the most data Amazon has fed to us in, a decade, is this one tool. And so outside of that, Helium 10 is primary. I mean, we also use some things like Data Dive is another really good one. Obviously, you can use Jungle Scout, but Helium at the end of the day is going to be kind of always my go-to for the most part, just because it really is, in my opinion, just the best when it comes to being able to very quickly source keywords and also look through like competitors and create your own market even, right? Like if you know that you have like 10 different really competitive people against you or products against you, throw those into a market and get regular updates as to what they have done and add new keywords. If they're trying to break into a new niche or a new keyword that has some search volume, follow right behind them, right? Or be the guy who's doing it.
Great. And regarding the frequency, to check that update, so what you will suggest? So it depends on the competition and a lot of other factors.
Yeah, it depends on the competition and other factors. I'm always a firm believer in the idea that you should typically be rotating your keywords on a listing, your titles, your bullet point, your description, A+ content, alt text, etc. You should be rotating that, at least once monthly to kind of get the maximum effect out of, rankability and indexing on keywords. But I've seen some people who try and do it more frequently. They update their meta tags, once a week. That I'm a little less thinking that actually is going to be useful unless you're a very high sales volume product, right? Because the biggest thing is that you need those sales to be able to rank. And so if you're not getting 1,000+ sales a week, it's not going to be useful to you to rotate more frequently on name keywords.
Yeah. And pricing is a very important factor, right? Steven always say, bring it down to 50% and then gradually increase it, right? So is that the same procedure that you suggest, or is there any different variant that you have in mind?
So it's always funny because Steven is the king of the click-through rate, right? It's the most important factor to him. I am the king of, I think conversion rate is the most important factor. And we constantly have this battle going, and where he's like, well, you won't have conversions without clicks. I'm like, well, your ability to get clicks is pointless if you can't rank with conversions. So
exactly,
it's this constant battle. But no, I am still dead set in that same mind with the idea that I'm a big conversion guy, that dropping price, especially when you first launch, is just like crucial. There's nothing that will help you convert better on Amazon than price. Price is the number one converting factor. And that shows with the fact that Amazon just recently launched Haul on its platform, right? The Temu competitor. And it's like, the only reason they did that is because they have a bunch of sellers that have products for $2.99 that they can sell, right? So it's exactly like that, in my opinion, that you should, when you launch, do that 50% strategy, bump it up every so often, etc.
Regarding, the keyword, title structure, how do you structure it? If you want to, the good scenario, is there any special format that you use?
This is my big hater moment that a lot of people have frequently called me out for. And it is that I'm a firm believer, when you launch on Amazon and you are just kind of like a small seller, your brand name means nothing to me. Okay. And I think that people who put their brand name in the first beginning of your title, it's the worst decision you can make on Amazon. It does nothing for you until your brand has at least 500 search volume, but more realistically, 800 to 1,000. Until you have search volume from a brand name perspective, do not add your brand name to the beginning of your listing, because all you're doing, if you think about it, 60 to 70% of people buy from mobile. So the only thing they see is those first 5 keywords. If your brand name that nobody knows is the one of those 5 or sometimes 2, it's like that does nothing for you to help get click-through rate and to convert on the product, right? So always throw it at the end of the title. Have your most important top keywords that very accurately describe and are very relevant to your product as your first 5. Because those are going to be what people see, and that's what people are going to want to click through because of.
And you mentioned about the first 5 keywords, right? So we can use that to rank internally within Amazon. What about external, for example, Google, like canonical URLs and stuff like that? So how do you optimize for that?
Dude, so that's one of those things that it's actually kind of funny, because a lot of people, for some reason, didn't know this, but you can actually change the URL of your product. Amazon doesn't give you the ability to directly change it, but if you ever go to any product on Amazon, you'll notice that it has typically 4 to 5 keywords in the URL. All you have to do, if you ever want to change that, it's usually going to be those first 5 keywords, but it doesn't change after it's those top ranking keywords. So if you ever need to change it for some reason, you can by just asking seller support and giving them the tag that you want it to be. So it can be up to 5 keywords. And we use that across the board on listings all the time on client accounts, because it helps with Google all the time. If you know that your keyword or your brand has much more searchability on Google, absolutely throw in, the brand name into the URL or something.
Yeah, that's a good point. And regarding, let's assume that we have the keyword research and everything ready, and we want to distribute the keywords on different locations like title, bullet points, item specific, behind A+ content and everything. So in terms of weight of the search terms, what do you think the most important one? Important
title,
location.
absolutely. Title, absolutely, I think is
Title,
most
okay.
important as far as placement goes for any search terms whatsoever. And I think bullet points is secondary to that. And then after that, it's description, A+ content, then it's alt text, right? So I don't think there's any question about that at this point. And realistically, it makes sense when you think about it. The things that people see most frequently are your title. And so Amazon's going to give a lot of weight to you ranking off of keywords in your title. Same thing with bullet points. It's right there next to your title and so on and so forth.
And regarding images, right? Do you want to use a specific format like, the main image and infographic, then lifestyle? Do you have any special format or special order?
Yeah. I'm
follow?
always on images. I'm always going to say, use your main image. Make sure you have main image hack. You gotta always have your main image hack. Infographic for probably the next two of them. Then I like to throw lifestyles and then try and have a video in there if you can. If can't have a video, then just throw some more info at the end. It's pretty simple formula when you get down to it for most listings at the end of the day. And it just makes the most sense because, pictures are for the people and text is for the robots. You don't throw a bunch of text to try and make it. The one thing I always try and tell people, though, with like infographics and stuff is open it in any one of your images on a phone and tell me if you can read it without zooming in. Because there's
That's a really
nothing
good point.
that will make me hate on someone's listing faster than just like going to it and seeing them have like an infographic with some text or something. And I'm like, I got glasses, man. I am not the best vision in the world. And so if I can't read it on my desktop, I'm like, no one's reading that on their phone,
Yeah. That's a very good point, actually. A lot of people miss, I normally search on mobile and it's the same thing happening again and again. Hell, the text are so small, you can't even read it, what's written on the infographic image. And, the mobile versus desktop, the percentage is higher, right? The mobile users are higher in terms of...
Yeah, it's 60 to 70% at this point of buyers are on mobile. And so the one kind of category that I would say make sure you still have like a really good desktop is if you're selling a product that is very B2B, office type heavy, because they're going to be likely buying from their computer while they're at work.
Yeah. And I want to pick your mind on, for a product, there are a lot of use cases. There'll be a lot of questions for that product, right? And ideally, we want to include them on the listing, the use cases and the questions. And normally we can use like, Answer the Public or some websites like that. But this is to please Rufus, right? The new one. So normally this is something that I heard from, industry leaders to include those and some on the Q&A as well. What's your take on optimizing for Rufus?
So I think I'm also in the minority with this one, I will say. But here
it's good to have in the opposite side.
Yeah. I'm a bit. I'm not really a traditionalist with this one, in the sense that I will say, I am a firm believer in the idea that unless you have like over 100 to 200 reviews are pointless. Think about it. If you're like going and you're looking for a place to go eat, right? And you see a place that has 25 reviews and then another place that has 5 reviews, you're going to think of those as the exact same, right?
Yeah.
And better yet, the only time reviews ever matter is when you drop below 3.5. Like if you drop below 3.5 stars on Amazon, that is essentially, in my opinion, a dead listing, right? Like it's dead products in the water at that point. It's so hard to get like back up past 3.5 if you have like sizable amount of reviews. But realistically, no one is going to think of, the reviews. They're not as impactful, especially for like everyday products, and it's not going to sway someone nearly as much as price is, right? So if you have like a very high ticket item, yeah, reviews are probably more impactful for you. But again, if you have a tiny little computer cleaner kit or whatever that I think I paid, I don't know, $7 for this, like I'm guessing this listing probably had thousands of reviews. I didn't look at a single one of them. It does not matter at the end of the day for a large percentage of sellers, especially when you're playing off of a price side. If you're a higher price, yeah, it does, but it really won't matter until you get, again, like 100+ reviews, because people don't what's the difference between 5 and 25 people? It's not anything. It's still in people's minds like a small sampling of people. So optimizing for reviews, throw in a little, card into your box and ask people for a review. Do not ask them for a positive review for a gift card or anything. Cannot stress that enough. I do a live show every Friday. I swear there's at least one person who asks if they can do that every single week without fail. It's like, no, you cannot. Do not encourage positive reviews.
Yeah. It's true. I still get some orders with the same request. So now they don't ask it, but they put that 5-star, like without asking. So indirectly asking, it's quite tricky. And in your experience, let's assume a product is 4.3 star, right? Then it dropped to 4 stars. What kind of sales drop or conversion drop you have seen, for those 3.3 star drop?
Again, there's not going to be much. The big thing at the end of the day is, again, like 3.5 or lower or I should say below 3.5. If you have like an age listing, that's like kind of dead listing, right? That's area where reviews do matter. But anything above realistically like a 3.8 to 3.9, it doesn't matter as much unless you have a direct competitor and you're up near the top and they are full 5-star across the board and you're, in that 4 to 4.3 area or 3.9 area. Yeah, that's when things get a little dicey, but it's not going to be as hurtful of a converting factor as I think people imagine it to be until you start to drop to like 3.8 and lower. That's when you're actually going to start to see some conversion hurt from it. But especially when you're like looking at a product on Amazon does a really, really poor job of showing the actual star rating with the point system, right? Because, the difference between a 4.7 and a 5.0 as far as someone looking at the stars is negligible. Like you're not seeing that. Same goes for the difference between a 3.9 and like a 4.3 or a 4.0, right? Like you're not going to see the difference. It still just looks like 4 stars and people are going to round up in their head anyways. So that's kind of the area where
Yeah. Funny enough, one of the guy, they, in the UK, they have digged into the data. They spent days looking into the data, and they found out that the more reviews you have, I'm not sure what kind of price range the item was, but the more reviews have, the better the conversion is, the better the PPC spend is, the lower the spend is, in terms of comparing that with a launch product with less than 10 reviews. So it was doing much, much, much better. And I also want to ask you, one of the main things is that you have to benchmark, like sales with their competition, for example. But we need to benchmark conversion. We need to benchmark returns. So how do you get, let's take returns. How do you get the category average, subcategory average returns to benchmark on from Amazon?
Are you asking like as far as understanding what the average across the board?
Yeah, correct. For that subcategory. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So it's actually fun because this year Amazon opened up their new return portal, right? So they had their old one, which I hated. They have their new one. It's really cool, and it shows you your average, and then it also will show you essentially when you're going to start getting charged more for the return, etc. But alongside that, you can actually now search and see they release the data on what the category average is for every single category on Amazon. So it's really cool to be able to see, hey, at what point am I going to be better or worse than the category, right? Am I, if I get 10 returns a week, is that better than the average person in my category or worse? And so you can easily just search for that on Amazon. If you literally in search bar, I think if you just type in category returns, then it will just pop up.
New dashboard,
you can also find it from the new return portal, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. And do you still use eBay to sell or anything like that?
No.
Well,
yeah,
we
have a couple of, I will say we have a couple of clients that currently do, but I haven't sold anything on eBay in years at this point. Yeah,
their return graphs and dashboard, it's quite nice compared to Amazon. It shows you exactly on a graph, where the competition is and where you are and everything. So it's much cool.
That's one of the things that always interested me about how Amazon took over the e-commerce space compared to eBay, because one thing mean, don't get me wrong. eBay's user experience for sellers is abysmal. It's abysmal. Nobody can argue that. But their willingness to give data to sellers is not compared to Amazon. That's the one thing. Amazon hates giving sellers data. I don't know why. They just want to keep it all for themselves, I'm guessing, and then sell it and mine it, whatever. But I mean, the fact that their software is like Helium 10, right? That had to be created because Amazon doesn't give sellers like any access to any data, whereas like eBay, they give you all the data in the world, which is one of the things I will credit them for, even if they are dying at this point.
Yeah. And on Amazon, I want to ask you about conversion. Do you track conversion? So let's assume it's a big client, like turning a good amount of sales. Do you track like in a weekly conversion rate for that specific product, for example?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It works better from an advertising perspective, I will say, especially with how Amazon tracks its data. But conversion rate is one of the, again, I'm a big conversion rate guy.
Yeah, you're the king.
I'm all about tracking it, and it's nice. Amazon has actually released some new features that make it a little bit easier in like the business reports, to where now you can actually filter by like ASIN, right? When you used to not be able to do that. And so it's gotten easier to track conversion rate overall with ASINs. And, you can see things like the ICAP funnel, right? With, your search catalog, search query performance, and just understanding where you're at from a market perspective, right? And understanding, hey, what am I actually doing on this product? And absolutely, it's going to help to, if you're making changes regularly on, the listing, doing any A/B testing, understanding your conversion rate is crucial.
Yeah. And regarding the fees, we have SKU economics, right? It will show you exactly the breakdown of the fees and everything. And if you want to do it in bulk, the full catalog, let's assume they have like 100 listing. What other methods you will look into?
As far as like fees in general, or?
Yeah, for fees in general, like FBA fees, pick and pack.
Yeah, I mean, Amazon is bad at the fee thing too. Because they have so many fees and they don't make it simple for you to understand how they are affected. So I think the best example in the world of this is their low inventory fee, in which for anyone who hasn't looked at it, Amazon's low inventory fee is one of like what seems at first one of the most complicated calculations there possibly could be, because the issue is they essentially take an average of both 90 days and average of 30 days. And then you also have to take that average, divide it by what your current inventory is, look at a 28-day, and if either one of them is higher, you don't get a low inventory fee. But if neither of them is higher, you do. So it's like they're giving you the benefit of the doubt while also not at the same time. And so I made an entire video recently just diving into the insanity of low inventory fees and how it's calculated. Because it's difficult. The biggest thing I will say is their FBA calculator is a blessing for anyone who is ever going to sell on their platform and like looking to sell, because that gives you the best possible breakdown out of like anywhere of actually understanding fees and what you're going to be paying and like comparing and contrasting to like other products. I love their FBA revenue calculator. That is probably the best thing they've ever launched, is that one feature when it comes to calculating fees. But past that, I mean, honestly, get a software. There's a million softwares out there that can help you with the fees, and you really should, because Amazon's not great at it. They're a payment portal or whatever it is, disbursement portal. It's the most archaic thing I've ever seen. It's not helpful.
It is not, and the figure doesn't match. If you're running
never.
Vouchers and everything, it never matches. That's Amazon. Also, I want to ask you about, you are good at conversion, right? So you mentioned price is one of the important factor, conversion. Mm-hmm. What are the other, let's assume the conversion drop. Okay, we haven't changed the price. The price is static. So what are the other areas that you will look into to fix the issue?
So the thing I love about conversion is that price is the number one converting factor. So if conversion ever drops, you can always just work your way backwards through, the ICAP funnel. So your impressions, your click-through rates, your add to carts, right? So, okay. Your price never drops. Okay, so your conversion, your purchases drop. Okay, what about add carts? Are we getting more or less, a brand cart abandoners, right? If we're starting to get less brand cart abandoners, we know that also means our add to cart rate is dropping. Okay, so that could be an indicator of something on your product detail page, right? So you may have started a new advertising campaign for a specific keyword, and it turns out people think that keyword is super relevant to your product, and they click on it and it's not at all relevant to it. You're getting more impressions, you're getting more clicks, but if you're not getting your cart ads and you're not getting your purchases, means it's not really a relevant keyword. The amount of times I have gone in where someone's like, yeah, this is the most relevant keyword I could have, but I'm not getting anything from it. We're getting so many clicks, we're getting so many impressions, but nobody's purchasing. I'm like, consider that it's not relevant and you are misleading people with your title and your image. So yeah, going through your PDP, understanding what your imagery is, how you're actually talking about the product, and you can look at things like reviews. Has your review rating dropped? If it has, then typically you'll see that more often with your click-through rate when it comes to reviews dropping a lot, and rather than kind of conversions. But it's still an area to look at and see if you are accurately describing your product. But that's the thing. There's so many different avenues you can check. Always just kind of work your way back to see what is the actual starting line, right? Like, are you not getting impressions anymore, or are you just getting less? Okay, that could have something to do with advertising. Are you not getting clicks anymore? Okay, that has something to do with, potentially advertising, but more likely your image and what you're going after. So,
and on the topic of advertising, is there any checklist that you will do before starting the advertising? So if one of those factors is not there, you will say, okay, we don't advertise now because it will not work properly. So what are the other things that you like a red flag for not advertising?
Always competitor research. The amount of times I've answered the question, again, similar to the thing about the product insert and the asking for a review, every single week I answer the question of, hey, what do I do when I'm starting advertising? And I always have the same answer. Couple of exact campaigns, 1 or 2 phrased campaigns, maybe a broad campaign, and get yourself an auto catch-all campaign. That is my go-to all time. 5 to 10 keyword targets max per ad group. The biggest thing, though, that I see people mess up is that when they're doing keyword research for advertising, they don't stop to consider which of their competitors they should be looking at and going after and looking at their keywords. A lot of times, I am talking majority of the time, people will either have this mentality that their product is so different from their competitors that they don't need to use competitors' targeting or competitor keyword research to be able to go after them, or they have this idea that essentially it doesn't make sense to go after competitors because then the competitor is going to come after them, that's just not true. It's not how Amazon works. They're going to come after you anyways. It doesn't matter. Pick your competitors correctly. Make sure they are an actual competitor to you, right? If you're selling a computer cleaner and you're going after someone who is selling, I don't know, a dust pan or something, right? Like, yeah, they both probably have dust in the keywords or in their keywords, but that doesn't mean they're a competitor to you, right? So that's the type of thing where I think a lot of people get a little too in the weeds about what is and what isn't relevant, and they really miss what relevancy actually means. And it's just put yourself in the shoes. What are you going to search for if you're wanting to buy your product? Do not do something that is super low search volume with only 20 people looking for it per month. That doesn't work for you.
Yeah, and let's assume that the product is a consumable. In that case, we want to build that customer base, right, to get the repeat purchase. So what tools you will use within Amazon to build that customer base?
Subscribe and save first and foremost.
Of
course, subscribe and save. Anyone who doesn't do subscribe and save with a consumable, I'm just like, why? It's like you're hoping that they come back to you. No, stop that. Yeah, so subscribe and save first and foremost, but past that as well, I would probably look at doing frequently things like brand tailored promotions. So brand tailored promotions actually just got a new look and feel and a bunch of new targeting options. I think it was last month. And there are a lot of options for growing your brand, whether it's like proactively or even, trying to get brand cart banners, which is a super easy thing to do. And you're gonna lose a little bit of profitability going after them, but it really is the best thing to do to look at your brand analytics and take a very long understanding of what each section of brand analytics means from an audience targeting platform and go after specific audience groups. because it can help immensely, especially with things like consumables where you're trying to have, long-term growth of the brand.
Yeah. And for the sub and save, what's your opinion on offering an X amount off for the first purchase, like a voucher or something like that?
I'm up in the air with it. Amazon already offers 5%. A lot of times, right? So, and they eat that cost. So I'm not usually against it. I mean, for a first time purchase, it's nice. Sometimes, I should say. It really depends on how your subscribe and save is going. But again, it's a converting factor aspect, right?
Yeah.
So, if you're ever running any form of like promotion yourself, then yeah, absolutely, I would look at adding some extra onto the subscribe and save just to be like, you don't want one-time purchases. Make it so that the one-time purchase looks like a bad deal comparatively to subscribing and saving.
Yeah. And you mentioned about the brand promotions and everything, right? So that's we can dig into that, take a full episode on that topic. So, but on the top level, how can we target buyer groups, like age groups, or how can we do that within brand tailored promotions?
So brand tailored promotions, it doesn't get as nitty gritty, unfortunately, as like age groups. I wish it did. They separate out into audience types, which I think is almost better in my opinion. They do obviously give some data definitions to each of the audience types and say you can see, for instance, on your brand analytics, like what percentage of which age group and which male, female, and everything are buying your products. And they give you that data, but they don't give us the actual ability to go after that exact type. I want like as much as I hate saying it, I want as nitty gritty targeting as like meta ads, where you can be like, I would like to target only women that are age 31 and live in Miami, Florida. And that is it. Like,
yeah, Meta does it really nice. Yeah,
they do. It's the one thing that they love their advertisers, because that is the one thing I will say that they have over Amazon when it comes to advertising. But yeah, the audience groups with brand tailored promotions are really interesting because you can look at essentially targeting, brand card banners. You can look at people who just spend a lot on the platform or spend a lot just within your category type, right? But maybe they're not buying your product. So it's somebody who, let's say you have consumable again, somebody who buys a lot of chips and you sell chips, but they're not buying your chips. Okay, let's target specifically that audience group of people who are doing that, give them a discount. Price is number one converting factor. Guess what? You end up converting them. So I love the ability to target different audience groups, in that capacity and whatnot. I can't wait for the day in which they bring that kind of targeting audience abilities, like just directly to, I should say, sponsored products. Because we do have that obviously with like sponsored brands and, sponsored display at this point, but we don't have it with sponsored products yet. That's why I want.
It will come one day, hopefully.
One can only hope. Most people would just say, go to DSP, and it's like, well, that's expensive.
It is expensive, and it doesn't fit a lot of business as well in terms of budget. I want to ask you about B2B. It's not a big, in terms of sales, it's not that big compared to B2C. But even if it's like 2 or 3%, will count, right, when you look into annual sales. How can we optimize your listing for B2B?
I think this is one of the more difficult things on Amazon. It really comes down to category. We have obviously a lot of different brands we work with, right? And I've worked with hundreds at this point. And the biggest thing, especially now that Amazon has like essentially nuked their ability for doing like business quotes and things like that, because people who aren't selling B2B, who don't know, back in the day, you used to be able to, if you have a business account, go on to products and like offer and essentially haggle people for like quotes of, hey, I want 10 of these and I'll pay you, instead of $50, I'll pay you $42 a unit. And it's like, it's insane that used to be a thing that you could do. And there is still some accounts that I think you have the ability to, but they're largely phasing that out from Amazon at this point in time. And so the big aspect when it comes to growing and building a B2B business on Amazon is you have to know your audience and how they look for the product very, very well, because you cannot go after the same exact type of targeting as anything that's B2C. I think a great example is if you're selling like, HIPAA approved, or not HIPAA, what is it? OSHA approved life jackets, right? There's going to be specific OSHA compliance documentation and keywords that people are looking for. They're not going to be searching for the keyword life jacket, and that's not going to be your target audience. They're going to be searching for OSHA 3HB approved life jacket, right? And that's how you need to really go after, is know your audience with whatever you're selling super, super well.
That's a very good point. Something came to my mind also. I think in the US, a certain medication, if you have insurance, you have to use special kind of medication, and it need to have certain like approval, and you can use that, if your product falls under that category and the sales are really high, what they say. And I think we are almost on 45 minutes, so I don't want to take much of the time, but my last question will be regarding Trump. It's a little bit outside of topic, but it is related
It's a
in terms
great
of
segue though.
Yeah, all the way on the other side. On the tariffs from China, I assume a lot of your clients, they source products from China. So how are you planned to deal with the tariff change if it comes in place?
Yeah, I think talk about Trump. We get into politics or e-commerce now. It's been a huge talking point, obviously, the last few weeks since the election. And I think even prior to the election, it was a really big thing. My standpoint has been this. Tariffs are typically inflationary, right? Like tariffs are just inflationary and they make people have to raise prices. I don't think there's anybody who's going to argue that aspect of things. That being said, I think that by and large, the ability for e-commerce sellers to move manufacturing to other areas is also just as easy. I think, and we have a very large, for instance, my Amazon guy, we hire all over North America. So we have a large percentage of people who are in Mexico. Mexico, for those that don't know, is becoming one of like the largest U.S. manufacturing countries, right? Wow. So like that's the type of thing where, look, it could end up being, yes, you're going to have to raise prices and people are going to have to pay a little bit more and things like that. And I think that with that, Amazon recently this week announced they're not going to do any fee hikes in 2025. I think part of that is because they are expecting this to come. They're like, we can't raise fees. That, and also the fact that I have a long-standing relationship with the idea that everyone keeps hating on Jeff Bezos, but Andy Jassy is the person who has given us more fees than anyone else.
True.
But I think the thing is, the Amazon's like, we're likely going to see some tariffs. Everyone is going to be paying more. We can't, overly saturate the market with, extra fees, extra everything. And so realistically, though, the way that, I look at Amazon in general is that Amazon is by and large not just a wants commodity site, is also a needs, right? And there are people who buy thousands of products on Amazon a year. I'm one of them. I have bought to date this year over 600 different items from Amazon, just everything from household items to computer cleaners, and so it's one of those things where I think by and large it may have a severe impact on how sellers source their products and how sellers look at increasing prices and how much they're selling their product for. But I also think at the same time, it will be a major detriment to not really the people you would think it would be. I think it will be mostly a detriment to things like all of these new Chinese sellers on Haul who are selling products for $2.99. Like you can't do that, right? Like if we end up adding tariffs, like 60% tariff, it just wipes out so many of these super price conscious, sellers on Amazon who are okay with making like a 1% margin. So realistically, I think, if it raises the bar for everyone, it raises the bar for everyone. And that's just how it is. The people who adapt well are going to be the ones who are already looking at potential manufacturing even before the idea of tariffs were announced.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I think Amazon will end up winning, in terms of fees. They will get more fees.
Of course they will.
The price goes up. Thanks a lot, Noah. It's really nice to chat with you. And thanks a lot for all the valuable knowledge that you have shared. Where can people, the viewers, can find you? And, do you offer any free account audits or stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. You guys can go to myamazonguy.com. Check us out there. You can also check me out on LinkedIn, just Noah Wickham on LinkedIn. I post daily content there. We also post daily content on our My Amazon Guy YouTube channel. So if you pretty much search Amazon Guy on nearly any platform. You'll probably find us. We're not that hard to find. Same with myself. And so, yeah, it was great being here, Sebastian. Love doing these type of things. We'll have to get together again sometime soon, next couple of months, see how the tariffs are shaking out.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's a good topic to talk about. And regarding, you have a Q&A as well, right? So which, I think it's Thursday or
Friday.
Which day?
Every single Friday, live at 12 p.m. on our YouTube channel, on our LinkedIn as well, on Twitch, on Facebook, every platform that you can find my Amazon Guy. I am live at 12 p.m. Eastern for about an hour and a half every Friday, where I just answer questions. You have a question about Amazon, come and ask me. If it doesn't even have to be Amazon. I've gotten some weird ones before, and I still answer them.
Yeah, it's good to have some change. Also, I will put the link, the LinkedIn link, and my Amazon Guy website link and everything in the show notes. So please do check it out. Thanks a lot, Noah, again.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Loved it.
Right. Cheers. Thank you.